So, like, this is the pan that I use for this stuff only. You know, I have a separate cupboard where my own spatulas, every strainer, all the bowl, everything that goes into making product stays there and hands off anybody else in the house, right? So I even have my own hammer in there for when I'm breaking up the beeswax. So just keep everything separate. So, you know, fast forward into, like, if you ever did this and we're putting stuff out into the world in commerce, I mean, there's all those things to consider, like commercial kitchen and those kinds of things. Less important for topicals, but still, you have to, like, when you start, you got to really get yourself set up. You want to make sure there's no food things hanging around on the kitchen counter. You know, you want to clean your sink, separate washcloths, all those things to get set up. Okay. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to make the pine and cedar, and it's here. This is the pine and cedar soother, and then we're going to make Fantastic Four lotion. And you guys, you can try these other ones too as well if you want while we're messing around. But so you can see the difference between the salve and the lotion is a lot of it is just consistency. The first thing we're going to do is melt some wax. So I pre-measured out the ratios, and I'm actually making kind of a big batch of the salve. Number one, because I have a regional gathering next weekend that I'm vending product at, and I figured why not make some of the stuff I have to make for that tonight and make it a sample. So this is actually going to be a triple batch. The ratio that I use is 1 ounce of beeswax to 10 ounces of the infused oil. So this is 3 ounces of wax, and it's going to take a little while to melt. We want to have it on fairly low heat. Where's our, which way does it go? Okay. Because if you try and melt your wax too fast, you can actually burn it. It gets this really, like, ooh, that's burnt smell. So you want to heat it up, like on my stove at home, it's like between 2 and 3, you know, on the number, and that's, I think that my numbers go up to 8, so it's pretty low. Once the wax is melted, then you're going to put your oil in, and that, like, kind of re-solidifies a little bit, so then you got to wait for this to warm up and get it all melty again. So we're going to start the wax for the lotion as well, and this is just going to be a double batch of the lotion. So this is 2 ounces, the same oil to wax ratio for the salve or for the lotion. We got one more here. I don't care. This one is easier. Too small for the burner. Okay, so we just have to wait for those to get melty. So we're gonna make the salves first. So in the pine and cedar, there is actually so this oil, and this is actually spruce and cedar because the last time I gathered for this oil, we had a neighbor that had a spruce tree that had to come down, so we helped take that down, and then we were able to use some of the tree's gifts to make the oil. So this oil, any of the oils that I make, I use a very small crock pot as I make it in pretty small batches so it doesn't go bad and I can use it up fast enough. And you have to get a crock pot that has a keep warm on it. Low is not low enough. You will burn your oil. So if you don't have a keep warm crock pot, other ways people do it is put it in like the warmest spot of the house and it just takes longer to infuse. Some people will put them next to the water heater or on top of the refrigerator or something. But you want to wait until that medicine goes into the oil. So when I'm using it in a crock pot, actually do it for like 2 to 3 days, depending on who's getting infused. I use grapeseed oil as a base. That's my preference. Same with the beeswax. That's my preference number one. The beeswax, because I can get it local and from people that I know, and so I can really know the quality of the wax. You can use all kinds of thickeners. People use shea butter, cocoa butter, and all kinds of other fancy, more solid fats. They're expensive, and they have different properties that, you know, depending on what you're making. Some people really like to use cocoa butter. I've found that this is a really nice neutral base that most people don't ever have an allergic reaction to. A lot of people, when they're making things, will put things like aloe or lanolin into the mix. That changes your ratios of measures completely, and you want to, you know, use whatever recipe that they're using. Lots of people are allergic to lanolin. So that is one thing to think about in terms of, you know, if you're going to be sharing with other people. That's a really high allergy trigger. So that's a good reason to leave that out. Grapeseed oil has a lot of vitamin E in it naturally. So it's got a higher shelf stability length of time. So, yeah, that's nothing. Maybe. And this one's going a little faster. Whoa.
Go too fast?
No, that one's going, it keeps wanting to fall. I want the handle to get hot. Let's put that over there more. So, yeah, we'll just go with that. We'll be able to tell if it starts to smell. Let's see, so the grapeseed oil, yeah, so I like that. It's low scent. It has a higher heat, smoke factor or whatever, and then it lasts longer on the shelf. So that's kind of why I picked that. Many people make things with olive oil. I don't care for the way that smells. It's kind of strong smelling to me in a topical. So that was just another reason for my choice. So the difference between making a lotion and making a salve is the water. So in here I have warming up to just like slightly warmer than room temperature. Distilled water, and you want to use distilled water because, you know, then we know it's sterile and there's not going to be anything to make your lotion go off, you know, more quickly than it might, because there's nothing preserving it except for the natural vitamin E that's in the grapeseed oil or whatever essential oils you put in. Sometimes those will help a shelf life, you know, like the stuff that's in the pine and cedar. Not to mention the properties from the pine and the cedar itself getting infused into the oil, which is antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory, and that's why it's in there as a wound healer and a skin healer and a bunch of other things. But the essential oils that I add in there are also real antimicrobial, so that one really can last a long time on the shelf, and it's kind of nice. So. Other properties like with the spruce or pine and cedar is that the spruce trees and the pine trees, they tend to be more diffusive in the tissue. So they'll go into the soft tissue and start kind of helping things move. And then the cedar takes it in deeper. Cedar goes deep. So it's just like this really nice, deep muscle, soft tissue, soother, and it feels really great on the skin. So, yeah. The essential oils that I put in there, Actually, it came from an aromatherapy formula that I used to use, or I still use in the diffuser, or to help me breathe. Sometimes I have in the past had some allergy, asthma kind of triggers. So it's 2 parts lavender, 2 parts eucalyptus, and 1 part white thyme. And it smells really good. Pass around just the straight oil so you can smell it. But it's also really clearing. And so that enhances what you can use this for. So it helps that soft tissue because all of those oils are kind of anti-inflammatory. So it's helping with that. And then it's also like it's clearing. So you can, oh, go ahead. Use it like Vicks and put it here, you know, when you're not feeling well. And it's, do you want to smell that? All right, we're getting there. And I'm just kind of being a little careful on this stove because I don't really know it, so this probably would be melted by now if it was at my house. That time.
This one goes 0 to 60.
We don't want to. Okay, so that's the pine and cedar. Any questions about any of the properties of that one, or how you might use it, or anything like that? You could try it. It's the volatile oils in there might be a little activating for the hives. So maybe if it didn't start soothing it right away, I would probably wipe it off. You know, the one that I would suggest for hives is the skin salvation. The skin salvation, there's a balm there and a lotion, so you can try either one. That has calendula, chamomile, and mint in it as the herbs. So calendula and chamomile are super duper skin healers. So anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, very good wound healer, and the mint kind of helps to enhance that. And then in there is also essential oils of tea tree and lavender, which are also really skin wound healing specific. And that recipe came from years ago when I worked at the hospital. And we had a patient that was on the unit for a really long time, and they were from far away, and his wife was staying at, there was a local boarding house back in that time where family members could stay next to the hospital. And she was staying there, but she didn't have, they came down in like emergency helicopter. She didn't have a lot of stuff with her and whatever. And one day it was really, really hot summer, and she was one of these kapha types she was just dying in the heat. And she had some trouble with a heat rash. And she's like, what can you do? And I said, well, I don't know, I'll go home and I'll look and see what I have. And I made up that salve for her. And this is back when I was like selling things at the farmer's market in like baby food jars, just really beginner. And so I made that up and I brought it to her the next day, and she used it and it worked like a charm. So I was like, yeah, okay, I got my own new little formula. And so then I took all the extra and I brought it to the farmer's market where I was vending that week. And this, it was at UMD. And UMD has like a summer senior hostel. And the seniors can go and stay in the dorms for like this much money and be tourists and whatnot. So this older couple that would frequent the market came up, and she goes over to the guy, her husband, and she goes, "What have you got for this?" And she holds his arm up, and he's got this psoriasis elbows, right? And so this is melted. And I'll just show you what it looks like. to, melted wax. But then when we pour it in, this is what I'm gonna take it over so you can see what happens. So you know what you have to wait for then. Because it's just gonna get all like thick again. See that? So now you gotta just wait for that to remelt. And then that's pretty much your salve. You just have to put your essential oils in there if you want. And use little special technical tools. Skewers and chopsticks are nice for stuff like this because you can wash them and reuse them for a while, but then when they're kind of past their prime, then you can compost them or use them in the wood stove. They make great fire starters with all that oil and wax like all soaked into the wood. So anyway, I gave the woman some of that salve, and they came back the next week and they were like going in their camper and leaving, and she's like, she bought every single jar because it was nearly smooth after just 1 week. So I have been making it ever since in that same exact formula, and it works for eczema and psoriasis and itching and skin that cracks open like a cut. The other herb that's in there, which is one of the reasons that it works so good on the skin that I forgot to say out loud, is yarrow. And yarrow is quintessential wound healer. So, alright, this is just gonna take another couple minutes. So that's the story behind that. So that's the one I would try on your hives because that itchy red skin. Alright. All right, who wants to fill the tins? Who's going to come up and pour this? I was just going to see if anybody jumped up, and everybody was like, no, I'm not going to do it. You can come up and do it, though. I don't know how this pan is going to pour. That would be very, very good to throw you under the bus. Okay. That can turn off. And, okay, I'm gonna put the oil in now, okay? So this, because it's a triple batch, is gonna probably take about 30 drops of oil of this blend. I kind of just do it by, well, that smells about right, you know, so that's how you figure out your blends. And then stir it with the stick again. And that smells about right. I'm gonna make it a little bit more.
Oh yeah, it'll be good.
Is it better?
Yeah.
Okay. And now we'll see. Maybe we want to not put this part on film.
I'll edit, don't worry.
You might need a paper towel. Oh, don't do that. You know what? Is there a there wouldn't happen to be a measuring cup with
I was gonna say nothing in there.
pouring
Poison,
spout?
right?
Oh, see, we're making. Usually I do this on a tray. Yeah, this pan is not pouring good at all. Ah, there we go. So we're gonna lose a little bit of this, but that's okay. We're gonna stick this back on that warm burner. See if we can get this to work better. All right. There we go. So that is how easy it is to make a salve. So these are 1 ounce tins, and with that first ratio of the 1 ounce of wax to the 10 or to the 1 cup of oil is makes 10 ounces pretty much. So I might need to open up all those little sample ones.
So what about the stuff that's hardening non-glass?
I know, that's why it's nice to pour it out of the hot container. But you can scrape this down and remelt it. Like if this was on a tray at my house, I would just wait for it to harden. You can just scrape it up and remelt it and fill the next container. So this one, I probably would take this Pyrex thing and stick it in like another pan with hot water around it, and then make sure that it's a little bit tempered to melt it down.
So in other words, do not microwave?
I don't really believe in microwaves. We don't have a microwave. We haven't had a microwave for many, 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 many years. So, my hands are greasy. Help! We'll see. We'll see. All right, now, let's see. See, it just kind of scrapes right down. And if you can get it fast enough, it'll just melt right back into the warmer oil. There's one. Maybe what we can do is, so what we're going to do is exactly what we just said. We'll put this some water. We'll just heat that back up and finish it off. This time of year is kind of nice because at my house we have a wood stove. So I would just stick it over on the wood stove until it melted. All right, now that one is ready for the, so you just want to wait until it turns like this inside there, and before you mess around and put the covers on. Because you might have to pick them up and wipe them off, and so on. All right, so that should do it for that.
How
So
long will these last?
if you keep them in a cool and a dark, or even in the door of the refrigerator, months. Yeah, long time. So same thing's gonna happen with the one we're gonna make the lotion. So we're just gonna wait for that to re-incorporate and melt back down. Check our water. You don't want your water to be too warm. Okay, it's just barely warmer than room temperature.
Baby bath one?
If it's too, probably not even baby bath warm. If it's too cold, it will, the oil and the beeswax will get too hard. It won't incorporate all the water right away. If it's too hot, it gets like not fluffy like that. It kind of goes in between sort of this salve and something in between that fluffiness. It's real dense and creamy, which is not a bad thing if that's what you're going for. Most people, when they think of a lotion, they already want something a little more fluffy. So if you are making with this recipe the same way, and you find that when you get to the water part, oh, it's a little too hot, it is not getting fluffy right away like you're gonna see it happen in here, you can put it in the freezer. Just stop what you're doing, stick it in the freezer for just like, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, depending on how cold your freezer is. And wait till it gets like a little hard looking, and then take it back out, and it will have cooled down enough so that it will still incorporate and fluff up. 9 times out of 10. And then if it doesn't, then you just, you have to save that batch out and just save that for, certain people. There's always a way to kind of reuse it and use it, so. All right. So in the Fantastic Four, which is probably one of my best sellers, is Solomon Seal, Mullein, St. John's wort, and comfrey. That's the base. Oftentimes I'll put other herbs in for certain special things. Like if someone needs that as a base, but then they also need something for something really like specifically acute nerve pain, then I might give them a tincture of prickly ash, for instance, to put in the lotion when they put on. But this is a real good, solid, just foundational blend. The Solomon Seal is a specialist with tendons and ligaments. It's a retensioner. Let's see, I can probably turn that up just a little bit. So it helps the fluids that are flowing along the tendon inside the tendon sheath. So your tendon is like a tube inside of like a rope inside of a tube. And when that gets sticky, fascia, scarring, inflammation, it gets, like it's stuck. The fluid's not flowing smoothly, so it can't move and bend and straighten and do the things that it's supposed to do, and then that causes more inflammation and maybe decreased range of motion and things like that, because we're not able to stretch all the way fully out. So Solomon Seal nourishes that system and helps the fluids to be nourished and get things moving, and it helps then the tendon and ligament to retention the where it's supposed to be. So that's why that one's in there. Mullein is a system lymphatic. So that means it works with the fluids of our body. So if there's swelling in a joint, around a bursa, anywhere in the soft tissue that's connecting the muscles, like the connecting spots, it's going to help to clear that, move congestion, whatever garbage is in there that's gumming things up, and get that swelling to move. So that one is in there. St. John's wort, topically, is a nerve specialist. So we think of St. John's wort sometimes when people use it for like nerves of the emotional kind, but it's really very specific to the nerves of the body. Anywhere that's got a profusion of nerve endings and blood endings is usually where we have a lot of sensitivity in the same area. And it helps to, it's a pain reliever. Again, it's also got some antimicrobial properties. It's anti-inflammatory, it helps clear the blood. So that helps with the pain big time. And then the comfrey that's in there helps the tissues to regenerate. Do we all know comfrey? We have comfrey in our gardens and seen it in the woods. Comfrey grows like crazy. It grows more crazily than a mint. So be very careful if you put comfrey anywhere in your garden. Make sure it's way on an edge and that you can keep it contained, because once it's there, you will never get rid of it, and it will try and take over the world. It grows like that. It's so that's the signature of how it helps our cells, our skin cells. It's moistening. It's got other signatures to tell us that it's good for our skin. It's got a real prickly leaf that kind of irritates your skin. So that when you make it into medicine, it soothes your skin. It's got a lot of constituents that like speed healing, which makes it then have a contraindication or a caution around using it on wounds that are too deep because it wants to heal that skin up so quickly that it sometimes will heal up just over the top first and it won't heal it from the bottom, so it can create a problem there. So you're wanting to always pair comfrey, unless it's just a really like a burn or a shallow scrape or something. It's perfect on that. It's great for sunburn, just all around tissue healing, keeping your skin intact and lovely and moist and juicy. But if it's got a deep component to it or infection, you always want to pair it with like yarrow or St. John's wort or something so that it will get down deep and heal that tissue all the way up that way. Comfrey also has a constituent that's called pyrrolizidine alkaloids, which can cause liver damage. So it's got a lot of cautions around knowing how to use it internally. It has been used internally in folk medicine, across the years, but a lot of herbalists are very, very careful with it. It's not something that you would use bunches of, short periods of time, very specific internal uses. It's a really mucilaginous, so it's good for some things, but you gotta know what you're doing with it. Topically, it's great, for all those things we talked about. Okay, so here we are, we're gonna make the lotion, and if you wanna come up and take a look inside the bowl while we're doing this, you're more than welcome to. You know what I need? Is there another spatula in here? We accidentally used. Okay. Has anybody in here ever made mayonnaise?
Made one?
Mayonnaise.
I guess.
Okay, so looks a lot the same. So you're just gonna start slow, a little bit at a time. Yeah. Yeah, it's just taking a while for the water to incorporate. And then you're gonna want to just a little bit like cooking. This part usually takes about 2 minutes. I should have got you some plastic bags, huh? Like Gallagher. But you can just see how it's just coming together. And then you're going to want to just make sure that you just like you're making any other kind of incorporation, check and make sure it's all blended up. There you go. Not too hard. So this is where, again, you'd want to put in your essential oils if that was something you wanted to do to make some flavor. I have tried in the past to like make one bigger batch of something and then kind of divide it out into the tins and put the essential oil in afterwards so you could vary your scents or whatever. But when you do it that way, it makes the lotion kind of fall. Like it takes some of the air out. It doesn't incorporate well. So if you're gonna try and split your batch, use like a couple of larger containers and do it in there before you put it into the tins. And then this. Anybody got some sore muscles? No? Usually at home, this goes like in a dish, and then whoever needs to use it first gets to use it up on the day of. But cleaning up sometimes can be take the most time. So, questions about this process? Alright, I'm just going to leave you in your tins. Paper towels. Alright, questions about any of the other herbs? What do we got over there yet? Is that working? Thank you, Andre. What's left over there?
Salvation, rose.
Oh, that's the comfrey, so that's just rose scented. Fantastic Four.
And then the balm.
Oh, the Arna Balm. So Arna Balm has Arnica chemicinus, which is a zone tolerant in our area, Arnica. It's a lot like its cousin Arnica montana, but it they look a lot the same, but if you see a picture of them side by side, the Arnica chemicinus is like half the size of the montana. Like flower shape is the same, but it's smaller. The leaf structure looks a lot the same, but again, it's just smaller version. All those lids will go skittering onto the floor. But it grows really well, so it's something that you can grow in your garden or in a pot even. And Arnica is a pain reliever. It's when you use Arnica in herbal form, it's only for topical. Any version of Arnica that you see that can be taken internally is homeopathic. Works the same, but the herb itself is not in that remedy. Arnica on an open wound, you never want to put it an herbal topical like that one. It says right on my label, do not put this on open skin or broken skin because it's irritating to the system in its herbal form that way. But on bruises, sprains, strains, any place where you've got soft tissue, like especially an acute injury, it's amazing for pain relief, and it helps to move the swelling in the blood. So it's really good at like closed wound, acute injuries. A lot of times Arnica works the best like in the first 24 to 48 hours, and then you can think about putting some of these other deeper tissue healers, like the Solomon Seal and St. John's wort, on board. Not that you couldn't do them both at the same time, but usually Arnica's kind of like the first aid, and then after that, can layer or switch things up. So I started pairing it with the Balm of Gilead some years ago because Balm of Gilead is also a pain reliever. It's anti-inflammatory. It's a wound healer. And it's kind of a special, unique helper that we can only gather certain times of year from the popple trees. So the shaking aspen or the quaking aspen is the Balm of Gilead specific, but there's similar resins and probably more abundance of oil of the same kind of healing properties in the cottonwood buds as well. So in some areas of the country where they have more cottonwoods than they do aspen trees, they gather the buds from that one. And it happens in the spring, so coming up sometime soon, when the trees start to bud, and before they open up into the leaf starts to open up, they're really super sticky. And there's this smell. You might be able to smell it a little bit if you smell the Arnabom. There is it's sweet. It's kind of pungent. It's very unique. There's just really good smell that just smells like, wow, that's got to be good medicine. And so when you're picking the buds, you want to bring whatever it is you're going to infuse them into with you out there, because it's the easiest way to do it. Or like, say you're going to infuse a jar of oil, just bring the jar that you're going to ultimately pour the oil into, and just put the buds right into there. Because if you try and stick them in a different container or in a bag or something, you'll lose a lot. I mean, they just like stick to you, like clump up and everything. A lot of people will actually use gloves, like rubber gloves, when they're picking them, because it's that sticky and it's resin, so it's kind of like pine sap, it just sticks on there forever. It smells amazing. So definitely one that you're going to be able to go and look for soon. So, all right, how are we doing over here with this?
Careful with the glass, make it a little warmer.
Okay. Yeah, it is. All right. So that was a good experiment to show you that you can salvage that. See if we can, still don't have enough containers. Might be just what we get. We could scrape this into a paper cup or something if we wanted to. Is there like a paper cup or something? All right, sure. Then I can take it home and remelt it and fill another container. There you go. So when you're cleaning up, here's the one thing that has been a challenge, like in terms of environment, I guess, is that I have not figured out a way to get around using paper towels to clean this stuff up. People use rags sometimes and can like reuse them, but again, you're saturating these rags with oil, stuff like that. So if you don't have a really good way to like recompost them and things like that, eventually, you end up just throwing those in the trash too, so I don't know which is better. But so I do when I'm cleaning stuff out, wipe out the containers and wipe off the things with paper towel, because you can't dump this down your sink. If you start washing all your oily, waxy things down your sink, you're gonna make really good friends with your local plumber in a hurry. And so, I've, you know, the question comes up over the years, different herbalists kind of chime in on it, and you know, there's really no one best solution. Try and find paper towels that are, you know, recycled, you know, to begin with. So that helps a little, but that's kind of the one downside. But you really want to make sure that you clean this waxy stuff off very carefully before you're washing stuff down the drain. And then when I get done washing everything the first time, which is hot soapy water, I go back then and I use like boiling water, like a hot pot like that, put boiling water and then like really rinse everything off so there's no residue, and everything's sanitized for the next time. So, and you know, if you're doing this for yourself in your kitchen, and maybe you don't need to be so hyper vigilant about that kind of sterilization or whatever, but it just helps to get all the residue off of your stuff. Because, you know, after a while, oil gets rancid. You don't get your stuff clean enough, and you pull out your pot the next time and it smells off. That's, you know, so these are getting hard enough. Pretty soon we can put the lids on and you guys can have your samples. Any other like questions, comments, thoughts about making this stuff or the herbs that are in them? Thoughts about what you might want to try and make on your own?
So this lotion kind of hardened. Is what that is that gonna end up like this?
Yep.
Alright.
Yeah, it's still real warm. So,
What did you say the shelf life of this stuff is?
so in a cool, out of the, you know, in the dark, or, you know, out of direct sunlight kind of thing, months. And it lasts for months because you don't need a lot. If you put any on, you can see that it spreads very far. So maybe this is too big. I have a lot of people that wish I would make this in a smaller size container, but I have, you know, I only have so much space and I can only do so much. So I have one container size that's 2 ounces that like special people get. Most of the stuff I make for the general population is like this size, because it's just, you know. So it does last a long time. I have people keep it in the door of the refrigerator, like in the where the butter goes. That's a really good place to keep anything like this. It's also a good place to keep some of your infused oils if you don't have a cold enough cupboard. They do get a little thick in there, and you have to warm them up before you use them, but it does keep your oil fresh for longer. So, friends that live in really hot areas will do that so that it saves the product. Yeah. What else? So next time, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of Western herbalism. I have a little short PowerPoint, but when we first got back into doing the class, because there wasn't so many people and it looked like numbers were kind of jumping up, so I thought maybe it's time to like go back and just give you like the history of where does the Western herbalism get its blend from, and it comes from a few different places. So we'll do that, and then we're going to start talking about like hopefully what we're going to be able to forage sometime in the near future.